Hey everybody, welcome to another Story Time with Frank. Got a quickie story. It's not too crazy or amazing. It's basically the story of how I ended up in Austin. So back in, I guess it would have been around 2000, early 2000, I used to work for CompUSA. You've probably heard of them. They're mostly out of business. I think Tiger Direct bought them and kept a few stores open here and there. Most of those have closed since. So I worked for them and as a manager for the service center, and they decided they sold the company to someone from Mexico, and that person decided that they could have a bunch of workers and then just have managers here and there and not have managers in every store to save some money. So my boss, which was a friend of mine, pulled me in his office and said, I hate to do this. And I said, I already know. The rumors have already been going around. It's fine. He's like, well, we have another job for you if you want to go work in a service center, in a bigger service center. We have a job for you working on computers. And I said, well, I'll think about it. So they had contacted me later that day and said, we're going to offer you 2 weeks severance, and then we'll pay you for your 2 weeks vacation. And I was like, that's it? So I put in 2 years and worked my way up. You guys don't formally offer me a job, which they hadn't offered me a job yet. Not formally. I'd never gotten any formal notification other than my manager saying that there was another job for me. So I was like, that's not going to work for me because I have bills to pay. How am I going to find another job? You guys just screwed me out of my job and gave me no notice, gave me no chance to go find another job. If they had called and said, hey, we're going to start laying off managers, we're going to give you a couple weeks notice so you can try to find something else, there would have been some possibilities. And there were jobs that were open a month before then that were really good jobs that I could have had. But anyway, so I renegotiated and ended up getting about 4.5 months of severance pay. And some other people had negotiated the same thing and got more money out of them. So anyway, so I didn't have to work. I paid up my bills. My apartments let me prepay my rent, so I was paid. So all that was taken care of. And so I just did whatever I wanted to for about a month. Would get up and go play darts with my friends at the bar and go drink a few beers and go hang out, or we would go... there's a whole nother story of going eating barbecue and then getting banned from putt-putt, and that's for a later time. But I had worked with a guy at the job I had before CompUSA. We lived in the same apartment complex. He went to work for this place in Dallas called Regency Systems. So I ended up going over there and interviewing, ended up getting the job. And so I worked there from 2000, and then in 2003, they had another company called S1 had officially bought the company. So they owned it, all that was finalized. So I decided to go on vacation, and I want to say it was around March or April. Yeah, it had to have been about March. And I went on vacation, and I went to go visit some relatives out in West Texas. And while I was there, I guess it was on Wednesday night, a friend of mine called that I worked with, and he was like, so what do you think about the news? And I go, what news? And he's like, nobody called you? I was like, I haven't heard from anybody. So I said, what's going on? And he goes, well, the company that bought us is closing the office. And I said, great, so we have to find jobs? And he goes, no, you're giving us an option. We can either move to Austin or we have to find other employment. And I was like, crap. So he was like, do you know what you're going to do? And I said, well, I guess I'm going to cut my vacation short and go to Austin and go look. And so that's what I did. I cut it short and left, I think, on Thursday. I think I left the next day, or I might have left Friday morning, and drove to Austin and stayed in a hotel and started looking at apartments. I don't know why I knew I was going. Partially because I had been seeing this girl in Dallas, and it wasn't serious, and she had other stuff going on, and so I knew that even if I stayed and found another job, that relationship probably was never going to be serious. So there was no point in staying I might as well go to Austin. I've always loved Austin. That's usually when I went on vacation, that's where I went. Even back in, might have been year before that, my friend and I had went to WrestleMania in Houston, and then we drove back, and then on my way, we dropped off the rental car, and I picked up my other rental car, and I ended up going to Austin and partying for that next weekend. I went to my grandmother's and then went to Austin. But anyway, so I contacted my boss on Friday and was like, hey, why didn't y'all tell me that we're having to move to Austin? He goes, well, I thought somebody called you. And I was like, no. And he goes, so he was like, what do you think? And I said, well, I'm in Austin now looking at apartments. And he goes, well, we kind of figured you would want to go. And I was like, yeah, but don't just make the assumption I might want to stay. You know, all my friends and family lived in Dallas-Fort Worth, and so I took a big leap going to Austin, and I'm one of the first ones that went down. I went down in June. So this June, I want to say 3rd, will be 10 years that I've been in Austin. So, and they moved everything for me. Like, basically, I called this crew, and they came in and helped me pack all my stuff up. And I loaded stuff from work off my desk, my computer, and all that stuff in my car, and I was going to take it down with me. So the day we moved, my mom stayed at my apartment so that the movers could get all my stuff. And my apartment complex was really cool. They didn't have another place for me to transfer to down here. They owned a property, but it was full. And so they basically let me out of the contract completely. And I had just re-signed the contract. I maybe was 2 months in to a 9-month contract. So, you know, they completely let me out, no penalties whatsoever. And so I ended up finding a place close to my work and moved down. And I can remember the first day I moved down, the first thing I did was go by the apartment to get the keys, make sure we were all settled on everything because the company was paying for all the deposits and the first month's rent and all that. So all that was straightened out. So I went to work and dropped off all of my stuff at my desk where I was going to sit and set it up, and the IT guys wanted to go and set it up, and I'm like, okay, that's fine because I'm still waiting on the movers. So finally the movers called and said, hey, we're here at the apartment. So I went back over there. It was only a couple of miles up the road, my apartments were. So I went back, met them, they unloaded, and then the guy was like, well, we moved your washer and dryer in, but we can't get them hooked up. And I was like, okay. And so I had noticed after they left that I guess somewhere on the washer, because the washer and dryer were given to me by a coworker, and I guess there was rust on the bottom of it. Well, they had knocked it loose and ground it into the carpet. And so, of course, I had to call, and the company was like, we'll send somebody out to clean it. And if we can't clean it, we'll deal with the apartments and we'll pay for the carpet, which is what they ended up doing. Anyway, they send over these 2 guys, and like 5 minutes later, washer and dryer was working. Everything was set up. So I thought, well, I lived behind an Albertsons at the time. It's not there anymore. So I said, well, I'll go to Albertsons, get me some beer and like something to eat out of their deli, and I'll just chill at the house. And luckily my cable and internet were already hooked up. So they had been out, I guess, the day before, because we moved on Saturday. So they had been out Friday and hooked everything up in the apartment. So all I had to do was just plug in, and I had all the information. So I basically got there, sat in my apartment, and I thought, oh my God, I'm like, I don't know anybody in Austin. None of my other coworkers are here. I don't have any friends. I have nothing going on. So it was rough probably the first couple of months was pretty rough. And what's funny is that July 4th I decided to go to Galveston for 4th of July. I love Galveston. Always have, always will. So I decided to go down there. And I drove through this little town, and they had this big open field, and then lanes on either side, and then like all these businesses. So there was this big gap where it's just a field in the middle of this thing. So you could tell that at some point in time they were going to put in a highway. You could tell because there was this gigantic field. It took me 2.5 hours to get to this little town because there was, I think, 1, 2, 3, 5 lights. So 5 red lights took me 2.5 hours to get through. And I unfortunately said the one thing that I will never say, and I've always regretted saying, is I will never. It's a horrible thing to say, because I said I will never live in this little crap hole town. Well, that's where I'm filming from right now. That same little town that took me 2.5 hours to get through. It's called Bastrop, Texas. And so that's where I live. What ended up happening is in 2004, the next year, I had been dating somebody that went to UT, and she was from the UK, and she wanted to go back for a while and then come back, and she wanted me to go with her, and I was like, no. And I had neck surgery. If you saw my injuries stories, that's where I had the neck surgery. And so that happened in May of 04. And so in July, I was going back up to Dallas to visit my family and friends. And this woman kept emailing me online. And I'd put a online, what I did is I had a friend that lived in Austin, somebody I met that lived in Austin. And so him and I were joking around one night and drinking. And I said, let's put profiles up and see how many girls that we can go out with, and we'll keep a tally. And he was like, okay, that sounds like fun. And so this woman ended up emailing me, and the way she was emailing me, it didn't seem legitimate. It seemed like one of those what I call auto trollers that just goes through and just emails you crap, and then you end up emailing them back, and they take your email address and spam the crap out of you. So I kept ignoring it, and finally I was like, who are you? And she responded, and we emailed right before I went to Dallas. So I went to Dallas, and when I came back, I think on the 6th, I ended up calling her, and we talked for a little bit. And then we started dating, and November of that year we got engaged. So we met officially in July. We got engaged in November, married in March, and we've been married 8 years. I had to think about it. So since 2005, we've been married for 8 years. So she lives in Bastrop, so that's where I moved to. And so that's been my thing I always joke about, is don't ever say you're never going to do something, because that's what you're going to end up going to do, or something similar to it. So anyway, that's how I ended up in Austin and now Bastrop. And, we nearly moved to Dallas 2 years ago. And then the fires, if you don't know about the Bastrop fires, Google them. Bastrop, Texas fires. It was a major issue. And so we ended up staying, even though I worked in Dallas, because we wanted to help people, and we started a nonprofit. And so we thought, well, we'll wait. And I was going to rent a house from a relative, and all that fell apart. And it's even to the point where I don't even talk to that whole side of the family. So I ended up finding another job, and ended up getting that job, which I love. And so if you watch my daily vlog, you know about my job, a little bit about it. So anyway, that's how I ended up in Austin. I don't think I'll ever live anywhere else. I mean, I've been tempted, when I go to California, I guess the 4 times I've been now, 3 times I've been to California now. I love California, but Austin's my home now. I don't even feel comfortable being in Dallas. I feel more comfortable being in Austin. It's just the place that I love. So anyway, that's how I ended up here. Hope you liked the story. If you did, give it the thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe. I've got better stories coming, funnier stories. And then I've actually, I've talked about this idea of having people act out my stories. Well, I've also got another plan that I'm not going to talk about yet. I got to get my lighting rig in and get a little bit better camera. But I'm going to tell my stories kind of third person and be kind of funny about it. So anyway, get prepared for those, because those should be pretty funny. So anyway, I've got 3 other channels. You should see them to the right. Make sure you check them out. To the right, so over here. I always forget it's the opposite. So over here, go check those out, and then subscribe to those, and like the videos that you like.